Hello, and welcome back to Flip Dish Takeaways, where we bring you excerpts from the restaurant and hospitality industry from around the world. I'm your host, Yvonne Morgan. In this episode, we talk to Rob O'Neill from the Village Yard located in Ballybrack in Dublin. The Village Yard is an artisan food and drink space, and Rob tells us how his new business was born out of the COVID-19 pandemic, and how vital his local community has been in ensuring the success of the Village Yard. We talk about the different types of vendors available in the Village Yard, how he has adapted over the past few months, and his plans for the future. Rob, so thanks for joining today, and
No
pleasure to meet you. And now
Lovely
I
to
know,
meet you too.
hopefully we'll run into each other again in the neighborhood once you come back from your holiday.
My little trip abroad.
Yeah,
Exotic.
yeah. Great. So I'll go ahead and get started. And I was wondering, just to kick off, if you can tell me a little bit more about yourself before we go into maybe the history of the yard and the business, but about yourself and your background and career, kind of where you came from.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I suppose now I'm 41 now, so I've only ever had one job in the sense of working for somebody and a company you might know well called MB&A over in the States. So we were based in Dublin, but that was back in 1998, and I worked for the summer. I told them it was going to be it was a career move. I was literally straight out of school, but they were paying well, and I got a job in their office in Stephen's Green. And from then on in, I mean, I was a DJ sort of by, if you want to call it by trade, if you can call DJing a trade. So what happened then was I was sort of gigging 3 and 4 nights a week as well. Money was good. And then myself and a friend of mine set up a DJ agency back in 2002. So that, as I say to you, the little job I had before was the only job I've ever worked for myself. Only job I've ever worked for somebody else. I've always worked for myself ever since. And so we set up in 2002, and we sort of grew it over the 5 or 6 years. Then we decided that it'd be a great idea to get into the pub business. But unfortunately, we got into the pub business in 2008, and within 6 months, the global economy had crashed. So we had a tough 4 years before we managed to sell up and get out of that. And then again, went back to the agency stuff, the DJ agency. So I bought my business partner out in 2013 and rebranded my business as Total Entertainment, and then have run that ever since. It's primarily a DJ agency, so we provide DJs, bands, live music to a lot of venues around Dublin. So, if, generally speaking, if you're in a pub in town in Dublin, you'll probably hear a DJ or band that works for me. So we would be sort of probably the biggest supplier in the city, and that was all going really well. We'd had 2 fantastic years in 2018 and 19. Rolled into 2020, and it was a case of, you could see there was this thing called coronavirus that everyone was talking about, but it hadn't really become a thing yet. But what happened was, we would have done a lot of work with Google, Facebook, Twitter, via a couple of the acts that we manage, and the American gigs started getting cancelled. So you went, like, I think there was probably about six big US tech corporate gigs that were booked in for January 2020. They all got cancelled. And then this thing looks pretty serious. Something's looking a bit dodgy here. And then sort of February, there was a funny feeling around, and everything sort of carried on as normal. And then suddenly you're into March 2020, and we're booking everything for St. Patrick's weekend, which is the single biggest day of the year for entertainment in Ireland. And one by one, the phone calls started coming in. We're cancelling. We can't take a chance. And then the weekend previous to that then was the weekend where they put the first restrictions on numbers into pubs in Dublin. And it ended up then, again, I was like sitting at home and 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, and one by one, phone calls coming in. No, we're going to close at 12. We can't take a chance. And that brought us up to the 15th of March. And literally from that day to today, bar a couple of little things here and there, that business has just, I'd like to say, been put to sleep, because I don't like to say it's, I do feel it will come back, but it's hibernating at the moment. I'm like yourself. I live quite local to what is now the village yard. And I was looking at it. I'm going, and I was, we could do something with that. There's potential there to, start off even I didn't intend to for it to be what it is. I was like, start off, we'll put a coffee shack outside. We'll do that. We'll start off with that, and we'll maybe do a couple of toasted sandwiches. So we started to we started making a few phone calls around. I got in touch with my current partner in the business, Paul, who would have been known for his because management of concessions at festivals and that kind of stuff. And I worked with him for the last 20 years on various events, and I knew he had some food trucks. So I rang him. He came out, had a look, and said, "I'll get involved with this with you." And we started off then in 31st of October, giving away free coffee on the streets of Ballybrack. And it just sort of grew from there into we got the toasties up and running out of the food truck at the weekends, and we had a couple of other traders coming in, guys doing bubble waffles and ice cream. We had another lovely American family selling cannoli and prosecco, and yeah, it just sort of blossomed from there, really.
Yeah, it's I think for those who maybe haven't seen the yard, can you describe a little bit about kind of how you set up the structure or the
Sure.
because this was now it was complete had required to be completely outside,
It did, yeah.
but you created quite a unique experience for members in the community.
Sure, yeah, and you've hit the nail on the head there with the community thing. That was always the backbone of what we were trying to do. I mean, we were looking to develop a community hub for people, and one thing that certainly shone to light over the say November, December, January, February in particular was when people were restricted to their 2K or their 5K. It was a reason to get out of the house. They'd walk down, have a cup of coffee while they were working from home. They would walk down at the weekend and get some food and a cup of coffee and a waffle for the kids. But to answer your question about the structure of it, the it's in the beer garden of an old pub. The We were very, very lucky in the sense that there was a stretch tent covering probably two-thirds of the beer garden as such. And within it there was a little container bar and a lot of sort of rubbish as they were trying to renovate the pub at the same time. So we cleared it out, brought in the first food truck. Bremy brought in a caravan to do the bubble waffles, which was Stevie and the Bubble Waffle Bucko. And at the time there was no seating allowed either, so it was literally one way in, one way out. You queued up and you got your food, and we within reason people would sort of hang around for a little bit, and then they'd move on.
And can you tell me a little about the vendors or the carts that you brought in? You mentioned a few of them.
Yeah.
Your decisions around which ones you chose or invited in, a little bit about
Sure.
what
Yeah.
worked, and then maybe around what you have there today.
Sure, of course. So the first up was the coffee, and I've always had a passion. My wife will tell you that all I've ever talked about is I'd love to own. I wanted to own a coffee shop. I've always had this thing about a coffee shop, and so Paul had the trailer. The trailer was it was I won't call it a horse box because it wasn't a horse box. It was used to for various different festival events, bottles of water, things like that. And previously, its claim to fame was that it was used on the set of Matt Damon's movie that he was recording, which is the reason that he was in the locality at the time. So that's its claim to fame. Matt Damon
Oh,
had
very
coffee.
cool.
Matt Damon had coffee out of it before anyone else in Ballybrack did. So there you go. But so I was looking at it going, okay, first of all, what are we going to call the space, the area? And well, it's a yard and it's in a village, so let's just call it the village yard. And it was simplicity is best. There's no point in trying to overcomplicate it. And to tag onto that, then okay, what are we going to call the coffee truck? And it was like the Yard Coffee Company. Keep it really simple again, and that's what we did. So we developed. If you look at the Instagram There's, there's the main page, which is the yard, the village yard, and then offshoots of that is all the little vendors that I have myself, or myself and Paul have, all have their own Instagram page. Now we don't post on it; we just have a very basic setup so we can tag it. But so you have the Yard Coffee Company, and we just started off again, as I say to you, with the coffee, just doing free coffee for a day, and within 2 days, it was doing really really well. I was doing all the coffee myself. We'd been sent off to barista school, very important as well. So our coffee supplier is a company called Matthew Algie. They're based in Glasgow, but they would supply an awful lot of places in Dublin that you'd never know of. So that was the coffee. We kept it simple. Coffee, didn't bother with too much on the food side of it. A couple of sort of sweet treats. But the idea behind with the coffee as well. We tried to keep it as local as possible with the suppliers. So we're using a local guy called Jay Whelan who makes fantastic protein balls. He lives down the road, and he's a chef in another local cafe as well. So and then Kieran from Fresh Bake would have provided the sweet treats, so the caramel squares and the rocky roads and all that kind of stuff. Um, so that's the coffee. The coffee, as it stands, is still there today. It's the one that's been there, hasn't changed at all. It's the same coffee, same branding, same everything. And the reason for that is that the long-term plan was to develop the front of the pub, which, if anyone knows, the front of it's the lounge area closest to the Apple Green Garage. So we're moving the coffee into the lounge, and we're creating a coffee shop deli with a little bit of retail within the front of the pub, which was always sort of the quietest part of the pub anyway. The first trader we had, which was Brendan, the cannoli man, as we call him. So he was down in the shopping centre in Dunleary. With sort of an old Piaggio scooter with a box on the back of it, and he was selling his sweet treats, cannoli, homemade, this amazing. His wife was a fantastic cook, so she was making lovely homemade treats, American style apple pie and all this kind of stuff. It was amazing. And the cannoli was filled with homemade mascarpone cream. I'm salivating just thinking about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, now you're making me regret not having one.
So, but we found with Brendan, and then he was doing prosecco and mulled wine, and he started off in November, and by the time it got to the end of December, you could see that his tenure probably had come to an end, because obviously people aren't going to drink mulled wine in January. It's
Right.
very much a Christmas
Yep.
thing. And he had an opportunity to go back to the States, so he decided he was going to go to the States for January. So that sort of put paid to that idea. He moved on. We moved Brendan's truck out. We moved our own van in, which was the Green Goblin, as we called it. You probably see it there with all the grass on it.
Yep.
It's gone now. And we started doing fresh homemade cold pressed juices, which were great, but very, very time consuming, very labor restrictive. And at the same time, we have been speaking to Jack and Becky in the Juice Box,
Hmm.
who are another local supplier. We decided to kick the Green Goblin to touch, and we went ahead with Juice Box. And it's the juicebox.ie. There's a couple of X's in it. Google it, you'll find it anyway. But they're great guys, and they'd be brilliant to work with as well. Then with that particular wagon with the Green Goblin, then we spoke to another sort of friend of the crew that work here. I'll get into more detail about the crew themselves, but Neve Weeks, who was one of the friends of the crew, she was baking lovely homemade cookies. So she came in then for about 6 weeks every Saturday morning and sold her cookies. That was called Chiba cookies, and they were amazing, really really good. So she came in then with her cookies. During all of this, the first thing we had, what's now become Blinder Burger, was what we called the Big Cheese, which was one of Paul's food trucks that, again, we clad in the same wood that we had on the front of the gates. And we were just doing grilled cheese sandwiches, nice and simple, ham and cheese with cheese. And yeah, it was good. It was just Saturdays and Sundays, 12 to 5, and it was a really really nice sambo. Though we put a lot of work into it. good suppliers, good product. And then my thing with it all the time was I'd love to get burgers and wings. And we were chatting to a couple of other local suppliers who were going to come in and run it with us. And then we were going with a supplier, and then he sort of last minute couldn't commit. So we then decided to give it a crack ourselves. And a friend of mine who's a well-known local chef came in and helped me out, set up the menu. So I spent a little bit of time on the flipping burgers myself, and we perfected the burger. And I don't know whether you had it now or not, but it's
Oh yeah.
yeah. So it genuinely, I mean, it's up there with one of the best burgers in Dublin. And then that's the beginning of the Blinder Burger thing. We also had the guys from Fish Shack who were there for probably about 4 or 5 months too. They would be well known around O'Leary for their unit on the East Pier, as well as their shop in Sandy Cove. And they were there for a good while. It worked out quite well. Again, just probably came to a natural end around the late spring. And we had been talking then to a another friend of the crew, who Ben Lowney, and he was working as a chef in a very well-known restaurant in town, one of my favourites, and he wanted to do something on his own, and he had this concept for Louisiana-style hot chicken. I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. It could complement the burger as well. Will it complement it? Will it take away from the business? What will it do? So we decided, anyway, listen, we're going to give it a go. And Ben, in fairness, Ben and his dad came out, and his dad would be a set designer on for movies. So they literally put us to shame with this amazing structure they put onto the front of the shack, beautifully lit, beautifully designed. And yeah, he took over that shack then at that stage I'd say in May maybe. And I don't know whether you've had the chicken burger yet, have you?
Yeah, so the challenge now is what do you choose? Like kind of like you said, but I don't think I think it's a win for you either way, and the
It
vendors. So you
is. It
have the
is.
burgers and the chicken, which are both
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, and now we've got the bar back open again as well, with as restrictions have eased. And from our point of view now, it's about choice number one. But I think if you take into consideration, you can walk down to the village and you can now have a chicken burger or tenders or his amazing Ben's loaded fries, or you can have a beef burger, or you can have a hot dog, or you can have our chicken wings, you can have a pint, you can have a coffee, you can have a sweet treat. But again, moving on to sort of the flip dish side of it as well, is the fact that you can order a blinder burger and you can tag on one of Ben's burgers as well onto the same order. That's been brilliant for us because um, it allows people to choose, and the two kitchens are right beside each other, so they can talk to each other. We can double print dockets and goes up in the wall. So all the timings have worked out really well.
That's
Um,
great. So you've been able to set up
yeah,
multiple brands within
yeah,
your online
within,
ordering.
yeah, and we'd look after the deliveries for both, and it would be, it's a bit of coordination in it, but it's worked out quite well.
Great.
We
Can I ask? Can we go back to the burgers? You mentioned something that I actually didn't know is quite interesting.
yeah,
So you made the decision. You wanted to bring burgers in, and you decided to do it yourself,
yes,
which is quite brave. You have experience in hospitality and in the industry,
I do.
but what kind of gave you that extra push, and how did you make the decisions on the menu and building the menu when you made the decision?
So what we did was I mean, the menu has evolved obviously over the last. I think the second week in December was the first weekend we ran with it, and I'll be honest with you, it was a wing and a prayer stuff, because we had a chef organised to start um, with us, and at 3 o'clock on our first Friday, he said, "Sorry lads, I'm after getting a full-time job. I'm gone." So that didn't work out too well. That's how I ended up bringing a friend of mine in who was a chef. Now he couldn't take the job because he was working himself. Um, and he came in and helped me out, got everything set up. So we started off, and there's a couple of other sort of burger. What I always liked about some burger places around town was the simplicity of it. You can have a burger or a cheeseburger. That's it. And that's what we've done. That's what we've stuck to. And we're not trying to do a burger which, is stacked with barbecue sauce and onion rings or, casual blue cheese and all this. No, we're keeping it really simple. You can have a burger or you can have a cheeseburger. We're also, you have to, if you take the burger product of the burger van as a standalone, it's not a particularly big unit. So you're looking at it going, okay, well, we can't do too much. And that was probably another deciding factor in keeping it really simple with the burgers. So we added on the hot dogs and we added on chicken wings. Now we've always, all the way through, kept the toasties going because that's just been a favourite. People, particularly on a Saturday and Sunday morning, they love an old toasty. But the loaded fries, then we sort of increased. We did our taco, our filthy garlic and cheese. Who doesn't like garlic and cheese fries? And then we had the curry. So we literally, and anyone asks us, it's just typical, call it Irish curry sauce. So McDonald's curry sauce, and that's it. Keep it really simple. If you want some onions on top of it, no problem at all. You want a bit of cheese, no problem at all. And we just did things that we with little things that we garnish all of our loaded fries with spring onion and chili. It just gives it a little bit of color. And um, the so then what we were looking at the menu going, okay, well, we can now manage all of these things from the van. Let's just keep it at that. Let's not try and increase it any further.
So you touched on community earlier in our conversation. And I think it's quite incredible to see that you grew a community out of this and having support around you. So that's obviously important, particularly over the past year.
Yes.
What does or what has the community meant for you and for the success of the village yard?
One word, everything. And that is, and I'm not being this. I've lived for the last 14 years 30 seconds away. And I'm not saying I wouldn't go down to the village too much, but I wouldn't have had any reason to. A car bar, maybe, down to Centra for milk or, pizza or, it's considering the population and the area that we live in, there was never a whole lot on offer in Ballybrack village. And that was something that we were looking at going. What I found was the people, the support we've had from the locals has been nothing short of phenomenal. They have really bought into it. They've support. I can't actually describe how good they've been. Everything from we decided we were going to sell Christmas trees in December, and that was a big thing for us actually, and that was probably the thing that got us talking to people more so because myself and Paul spent the last week in November up until Christmas week out in the street hawking Christmas trees. It was great fun. It was so much fun. And we even said at the time, going, this isn't work. This is not work. And it didn't matter whether it was raining, frosty, snowing, whatever it was. We were out there every day. But just got talking to people. And what I love about Ballybrack is you've got all kinds of people. You've got absolute salt of the earth. Um, You've got, the Killiney side of it, which is obviously seen as the poshies, you know what I mean, that kind of stuff, and everybody just meets. And I think what the Village Yard has done was brought two sides of a community together into one place. And I just find the mix of people, young, old, it's just fantastic. In the time we've been there, there's nothing but support. No aggro, no, some places you might get a little bit, particularly if there's a drink or two involved, but there's none of that. Everyone is just so happy and so supportive and so glad that they have the facility to to go to and the outlet to get out of the house, particularly if they're stuck working from home. But
Yeah, I'd say they're probably quite grateful to have what you mentioned, the facility and the outlet kind of within walking distance, probably for a lot of them,
yeah,
because there's not a load of parking around either. So I'm wondering, is your traffic, majority of your traffic, is it foot traffic?
yes, it is absolutely. Yeah, it is. I mean, I learned an awful lot as well from the delivery side of it, because you realize how many houses you have within, well, the 5 kilometer we use for delivery, but how many houses are in that vicinity, and the vast majority of our customers would come from within 2K. So you go, okay, well, they might order on a Friday for delivery and then come up on a Saturday and have a drink or have a cup of coffee, and you get to know it's the same faces every week. But it's, yes, there's a massive lack of parking, and I don't know how you would ever address that in Ballybrack unless you went dug down or went up. Um, and so with that in mind, yeah, people walk.
Yeah, I think it's quite an interesting time in that now there's probably different stages of, evolution. You've I'd say, like, you've set up the business. You have like you said, it's not a load of footfall, but you have many repeat customers who are coming from the community and visiting it again and again. They know what to expect. They love the different options that you have. If we go back to the business side of things for a minute, opening up during a pandemic is, some might say, risky. But with risk, obviously, comes possibility and opportunity. Did you have any concerns when you started setting up the yard? Now, I know your other business was kind of, like you said, it was going hibernating. I can't remember the word you used.
That was hibernating, yeah, yeah.
But maybe there's going to be a revival coming up
I,
soon.
I, I hope so. I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah.
So, what were kind of your key concerns in opening up during the pandemic? Was it kind of the unknown, or were there specific things that you were keeping your eye on?
Very much the unknown. I mean, I suppose, to use it, you're having a running battle with restrictions and changes in restrictions and changes in policy and enforcement. The one thing I wouldn't say I was ever nervous about setting it up, in the sense of, we did it without having to invest a huge amount into it financially. So the idea, and that was the go-to. The the idea behind it all along was, okay, well, look, Paul's coming on board. He's bringing the trader for the coffee. Take the coffee as one example. We've enough there. We can buy a month's worth of coffee. We can buy a month's worth of product. I was lucky enough that the site that it's on was a family business, so there was no huge pressure there. You just pay the bills, and I think that it allowed it to it allowed it, the support we had from family and friends and business partners, when we all came together, allowed it to sort of organically grow without having to put ourselves under any major pressure. I
And
mean, we're
going back
lucky.
to the
We're
community,
Yeah,
giving you the confidence to, this is working,
exactly.
take it forward. You have the support.
Absolutely. And as well, look, the risk was very low. It was always the case of, look, we'll try this. If it works, grand. If it doesn't, we can all, shake hands and walk away and wish each other a happy Christmas. And that was sort of the mantra of it, in the sense that it's give it a go and see what happens. But again, there was very little risk. That was probably the most important thing.
And can I ask, is the building owned by the yard now, or is it still a different
It's
family business?
still the family, yes, yeah. But so
Okay.
the long-term plan will be, now, with the way the yard has been successful, we envisage incorporating the rest of the building into it, in the sense of, we're going to split it into, on the left-hand side would be the village yard, on the right-hand side would be the village market. Within the village market, then we would have a pub element. We would have the coffee shop, as I explained, the deli. We're going to put some food traders in there as well, selling sort of artisan meats and fishes and that kind of stuff. And the idea then, the center area of the old pub, the idea behind it would be to create what we call the garden room, and that will be it can be for product launches, it can be for dining, it can be for events, functions. We're also looking at doing the likes of a flea market on a Saturday morning. So we the idea, it comes back to that community space again, that we will be able to be five or six things to what was once just a pub. The idea now is we can now do five or six things, and you're obviously bringing in the potential then for five or six different revenue streams. So that if if and again people don't really realize it so much. It is a very seasonal business. Um, Traditionally, Ballybrack from a pub point of view goes very quiet in the summer. Does very well in the winter. So we've managed to sort of negate that by having the outdoor space, and we did a fairly good renovation on it in June, when outdoor dining recommenced on the 7th of June. We renovated the yard itself and painted, decorated, new benches. Ben's Chicken sort of kicked on at the same time as that as well. Got the outdoor bar working for the drinkies, and the idea behind it is we've managed to now go, okay, well look, we can now handle the seasons, we can handle the seasonality a bit better. I suppose the idea behind it is, we will always be able to have five or six different sources of income coming in, and that'll hopefully then sort of maneuver the seasons a little bit.
Well, you've got your finger on the pulse. It sounds like you know what having five or six options and providing all those different kind of the options or in variety to your community is showing to or proving to be successful. Rob, I'd love to find out more about what's in store for the Village Yard for the future. In
Sure.
the upcoming weeks, I've heard you have a few new concepts and let's say offerings coming our way.
Yes, we do indeed. I won't say for definite just what the launch date is going to be. One thing we've found over the whole time is people would ask you all the time, what have you got for vegetarians? What have you got for vegans? Um, the problem we've had would be a lack of space, in the sense that you know we've we would love to have had. It'd be very difficult to cook to do a vegan burger in the Blinder Burger van, because it's quite limited for space. So, and then we were looking at it. So we had other vendors there that have moved. We've now replaced them with seating. So we are in the process of launching a new vegan and vegetarian pop-up called Yum Grub Dub. So Yum Grub is the Yum Grub Dub is the Instagram handle, but it's Yum Grub. So hopefully within the next sort of 7 to 14 days, we'll have that up and running. There's been plenty of requests from people out there for a vegan vegetarian option, and the two guys that are doing it are very much into the vegan side of things. You know what I mean? So it'd be interesting to see what they come up with. I haven't seen the menus yet, but I'm quite looking forward to testing the product.
Well, that sounds great. Something kind of a new concept to offer as well. Something quite different from what you're providing already. So that'll be
Exactly.
very exciting to see that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Looking forward to it.
I wanted to ask, in regard to kind of what you're seeing outside of Ireland, is there anything that you think is happening in other countries that Ireland would benefit from, that you see either as an opportunity for your business or other businesses in Ireland?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult at the moment, because we've had 18 months of lost business worldwide, really. Um, you do look to products in other countries. I mean, traditionally you look to New York and London. That's where, if I remember, like a couple of years ago, Shoreditch was the place to go, and everything. If you wanted a new idea, you went to Shoreditch. I did see something actually really really interesting. I was over here in Wales. We went out for a meal on Saturday, and it was a Spanish style grill restaurant. Food's fantastic, but the difference was that it was like the idea of it was like a butcher counter. So you go up, you don't order at the table. There's no menu. You go up to the counter. There's blackboards behind you with the different, your cuts of meat, your fish, your chicken, and everything is laid out in front of you like a butcher's counter. You actually pick the cut of steak or the piece of chicken or the piece of fish you want. They give you your options, your chips, your, you know, jackets, your sauce, whatever you want, what veg you want. They just literally take your order at the counter. You sit back down, enjoy your glass of wine, and the piece of meat or product that you've actually selected is what's cooked and brought to you. And I thought that was a really, really good concept, and I haven't seen it yet in Dublin. Probably giving away a trade secret now as well, but however, um, so that was something I went, oh, hang on a minute, this looks this could be an interesting concept, and I was like, oh, just make a little note of that and stick that in the back burner for future reference.
I have a final question for you.
Sure.
For our listeners, do you have any advice that you'd give to people who might be interested in starting a new business, or perhaps can you give some insight into how businesses can go about creating a community or network like you have in the Village Yard?
Yes, the first question, what I've learned particularly, I'm going to say that the pandemic will have been the best thing that ever happened to me business wise, because it's given me a new perspective on, number one, starting a business, number two, how I operated my other business, um, and my old default. We come up with an idea, and I would have to think big. I'd have to think of, instead of opening one village yard, I'm going to go, how am I going to have 20 of these? But I'd forget to go, so I'd go from A to Z without going from B onwards. And I go, okay, hang on a minute. And what I've learned with this, and if somebody was starting off, a business themselves, I just say, do you know what? Just start small. Don't overextend yourself. Don't think of, yes, it's nice to dream. It's nice to go, okay, well, I think this is a good product. I want to have 10 more of these. Brilliant if that works, but start off small. Don't overextend yourself. Spend what you can afford to lose. We've had many people calling us going, I have a beer garden, or I have a car park. Can you come and replicate what you did in Ballybrack? And the truth of it is, you probably can't, because it is so personality driven, and it's people. People come in a way to see us as well, which is nice. You know what I mean? They come to say hello to the lads, and if we were to sort of stretch ourselves to 2 and 3 and 4 more village yards, yeah, you probably would have. You might have financial gain. You might not. The others might not work. It can, and I think that people have bought into the fact that, they generally speaking, when they walk down for the cup of coffee, you'll see one of us there, and that's been a huge part of the success, definitely.
Great. Thank you. Rob, this was incredibly insightful. I've learned a lot, and I can't wait to come back up and visit you very soon. That's it for this week's episode of Flip Dish Takeaways. If you'd like to find out more, feel free to visit our website at flipdish.com. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you're listening. See you next time.